Class 12. In our last video on evolution, we had discussed Lamarckism, Darwinism, the postulates and theories, and the three types of natural selection as explained by Charles Darwin. Today we will discuss some examples of natural selection, those which are prescribed in the scope of syllabus for ISC. We have 4 examples discussed: DDT-resistant mosquito, industrial melanism, sickle cell anemia, and the last one you have in the scope is antibiotic resistance. So let's come to the first example, DDT-resistant mosquito. These examples actually follow the theory as was proposed and explained by Charles Darwin. Now, when DDT was first introduced as a chemical pesticide to control mosquitoes, it was tremendously successful. It has been seen that the population of mosquitoes, the original population, had 2 types of mosquitoes: DDT-resistant mosquitoes and DDT-sensitive mosquitoes. When DDT was first used, the DDT-sensitive mosquitoes died, whereas the DDT-resistant mosquitoes survived. These DDT-resistant mosquitoes then gave rise to new mosquitoes, and henceforth this went on, giving rise to new generations, all composing of DDT-resistant mosquitoes. And then a time came when the entire population had DDT-resistant mosquitoes. So now when DDT is being used to kill the mosquitoes, it is completely ineffective because the mosquitoes have become DDT resistant. So we can say that nature has finally selected the DDT resistant mosquitoes, and this explains natural selection as was explained by Charles Darwin with respect to 2 types of giraffe. If you remember in our last video, he had said that there were 2 types of giraffe in the environment, the long neck and the short neck, both. So here also we find 2 types of mosquito population, both resistant and sensitive. So out of these 2, the one which could adapt was considered as the fittest, and according to the survival of the fittest theory, they were selected by nature. Let's come to the second example. This is industrial melanism. As we all know, melanin is a skin pigment which is responsible for skin coloration. I will explain this with the help of a diagram. Let's look at this diagram. In England, especially in Manchester, it was noticed that in the environment there were 2 types of moth, peppered moth they were commonly called, a grey colored moth and a black colored moth. Before industrialization, all the tree trunks were greenish grey in color due to the deposition of lichen or lichen as you want to pronounce. Now, grey colored moth, which was called Biston betularia, on grey tree trunk were invisible to the birds of prey or the predator birds, and the birds could not detect them and could not kill them. So they survived. Whereas the black colored moth on grey tree trunks were quite visible to those birds, and the birds killed them and fed on them. As a result, this black colored moth died. So you can easily understand that the grey colored moth on grey tree trunk could camouflage itself, and it survived. What happened after industrialization? Due to the deposition of black carbon or soot on the tree trunks, the grey tree trunks turned dark black. Now the picture changes. Those same grey colored moth on black tree trunk became visible to the birds, whereas the black colored moth now on black tree trunk are literally invisible to the birds. So the birds now can detect the grey colored moth, killed them and fed on them, whereas the black colored moth survived. So after industrialization, it was seen that the black colored moth was selected by nature because they were invisible to the birds. So before industrialization and after industrialization, we have two different pictures. So this is what I have written here. Here I have given you exactly the keywords that you need to write in your answers. Before industrialization and after industrialization, grey and black colored peppered moth, grey moth on grey tree trunks invisible, black moth on grey tree trunks visible. They were killed by the birds. Then grey moth survived, black moth were killed. After industrialization, grey moth on black tree trunk, they became visible, whereas black moth on black tree trunk, they were invisible and they survived. These black moths were finally selected by nature. So this is also another example of natural selection. Let's come to the third one, sickle cell anemia. What is sickle cell anemia? It's a genetic disorder where the amino acid glutamic acid in hemoglobin is substituted by another amino acid called valine, and this causes a change in the shape of the RBC. Normally, you know, the RBCs are circular and biconcave in shape. Now the RBCs become sickle shaped, leading to sickle cell anemia, where hemolytic anemia occurs. This is a fatal disease. Now, in human population, three types of genotypes are considered with respect to this. If we consider normal hemoglobin as HbA and sickle cell hemoglobin as HbS, what are the three types of genotypes? Human beings may be HbA, that is homozygous normal. These human beings do not suffer from sickle cell anemia, but they are very, very prone to malaria because malarial parasites can survive in normal RBCs. They cannot survive in sickle-shaped RBCs. Second type of genotype, HbA, HbS. These are heterozygous. You can understand. These people, if they suffer from sickle cell anemia at all, the strength is mild and they can very easily cope with malaria because all the RBCs are not normal. Some are sickle-shaped. And as I said, malarial parasites do not survive on sickle-shaped hemoglobin. And the third type of genotype, as we find, HbS, homozygous sickle cell. Here, these humans usually die due to fatal sickle cell anemia. So here, there is no question of their being surviving. So if we consider all the three genotypes, what do we find? HbA, these people are prone to malaria. HbS prone to sickle cell anemia, whereas HbA, HbS heterozygous, they can cope with both sickle cell anemia and malaria. So in the race for survival of the fittest, they are considered the fittest and they are naturally selected. So finally, the heterozygotes are selected by nature based on Darwin's theory of natural selection. So they are selected by nature. This I am showing you in the form of an easy, simple diagram which will make it clear for you. Let's see the three types of genotypes. Homozygous, HbA, all the RBCs are normal. These people do not suffer from sickle cell anemia, but they are susceptible to malaria, prone to malaria. Heterozygous, having both normal RBCs and sickle cell RBC, HbA, HbS. They have mild sickle cell anemia if they have at all. And they are resistant to malaria. They can cope with malaria. So they are considered the best of all and they're selected by nature. And the third option is homozygous sickle cell. So all the RBCs are sickle cell RBCs. So they suffer from fatal sickle cell anemia, but they are resistant to malaria. So the main reason is malarial parasites cannot survive on sickle-shaped RBC. They survive very easily on normal RBC. So the heterozygotes are selected by nature. So I've given the keywords here again. In sickle cell anemia, what does the human population contains all the three different types of genotypes and who is finally selected by nature. And the last example you have is antibiotic resistant. Again, the same thing. Bacterial population has two types of bacteria: antibiotic sensitive bacteria, antibiotic resistant bacteria. When antibiotic was first used on them, all the antibiotic sensitive bacteria died, but the resistant bacteria survived. And they started reproducing, giving rise to new generations of bacteria. Finally, they were all antibiotic resistant. Their descendants were all resistant, and they were not killed by antibiotics any further. So all the antibiotic resistant bacteria were finally selected by nature. So again, this diagram will make it clear for you. Normal bacteria undergoing reproduction, giving rise to again sensitive, all antibiotic sensitive bacteria. They are giving rise to antibiotic sensitive bacteria. This one giving rise to both sensitive and some mutated forms which are resistant. Now let's consider 3 antibiotic sensitive and 1 antibiotic resistant bacteria, and we are growing them in a penicillin containing medium. You all know penicillin is an antibiotic. When they are grown in a penicillin containing medium, it is found that all the antibiotic sensitive bacteria finally are killed by penicillin. They cannot further give rise to new bacteria. They are killed here. But the antibiotic resistant bacteria, they are not killed. They further give rise to a new generation of antibiotic resistant bacteria. They will again further give rise to another generation of resistant bacteria. Finally, the whole population consists of antibiotic resistant bacteria, which are finally selected by nature. So again, you have all the key words here: sensitive and resistant bacteria finally selected. The nature selects the antibiotic resistant bacteria. So these are the 4 examples of natural selection which follow the theory of Charles Darwin. Thank you.